And here's what's coming up on today's show. South Africa is in the process to extradite the 2 suspects from Eswatini who are linked in the killing of rapper aka Keenan Forbes and his friend Tebelo Tibbs Motswane. The country's 4th largest party, the IFP, gears up for its national manifesto launch at the Moses Mabhida Stadium next weekend. And bad news, as motorists will have to dig deeper into their pockets to fill up at filling stations this coming week. A very good afternoon and welcome. You are watching The Week Ahead right here on the SABC News channel, broadcasting live from SABC Auckland Park Studios. I am your host, Alicia Jali. Do interact with us on our social media platform, that is at The Week Ahead, as well as our hashtag The Week Ahead. Good afternoon. Well, as 50 African countries prepare for elections this year, electoral bodies in the continent want these polls not to be a source of violence and derail democratic gains. And to speak to us about this and also the extradition of AKA and Tibbs murder suspects, we now bring in our international editor, Sophie Mokoena. Sophie, a very good afternoon to you. Look, you have observed a number of elections in recent times. How has the digital platforms as well as social media then been used by either voters or contestants or even political parties to garner support towards these elections?
Well, I think digital platform and also, as you pointed out, social media is currently playing a very important role in terms of candidates who are contesting elections, in terms of popularizing what they stand for and their manifestos that will be your political parties around the world. And it does have influence. When you look at elections, particularly on the continent, you'll realize that it was during the elections in Lesotho where young people used social media to mobilize, and they were able to propel the current prime minister to garner more votes, because when you look at the support that he got was mainly from young people, and that's the medium they used, because you know that the state broadcaster in some countries don't cover opposition parties or other parties that are not in government, and therefore most of the other candidates who are not in government, who are not seeking re-election, first-time contestants, they always use social media to popularize what they stand for. You look at what happened in Kenya, the same thing happened there. Young people were using social media to propel the current president, William Ruto. Zambia, it was the same thing, because the state media at that time was supporting the incumbent. And therefore, you see a situation where many people are using social media when they really want to launch their manifestos or they want to get support, including here in South Africa as we head towards elections. When you look at social media, you'll see that many parties and people, different people who aspire either to be at the National Assembly or the legislatures are using social media to get support. You know that there was an amendment to the Electoral Act in South Africa where individuals are also allowed to contest elections, and people, when they were requested to get those signatures, they were using social media to market themselves. And we'll see in terms of the final results, in terms of the registration of people who will be on the ballot and the political parties will be on the ballot, you will see that the issue of social media was quite important during these elections. And recently there was a conference here in South Africa where electoral institutions from around the continent came together to look at the role of social media or digital platform, the good and the bad.
Let's talk about that. I mean, Sophie, there can be both negative as well as positive benefits of these platforms, with obviously the onus of responsible usage falling mostly on the user, in that they have to check facts and verify the content that they consume. But the sector is also still largely unregulated. So are there any international guidelines, though? And maybe talk to us about then the responsibility of the political parties or the candidates, as well as the electoral bodies in the build-up to those elections.
Well, I think the political parties will use the digital platform and social media in general to ensure that they are visible. Whether you see it at times as a propaganda for them, it's what they want. But with institutions that are charged with responsibility of conducting elections, they have to make voters aware. That is why voter education is quite important, that these mediums, much as they are important, or the digital platform is important, you have to verify facts, because anybody can post anything on the digital platform, and therefore it is the responsibility of the institutions that are given responsibility to conduct credible elections to ensure that as they conduct voter education, this matter is included in terms of educating the voters to be able to make a distinction or to be able to verify information. With media, it's even more important to ensure that we verify, we speak to the relevant sources, we ensure that whatever is being aired has been properly verified, so that we don't mislead the nation or the voters. Yes, there will be mistakes, because sometimes there will be cracks, and the issue of visibility of political parties might put media houses under pressure, and people jostling to ensure that you get the story first. And that is why verification is one important process. And we know that media houses, you have a line of procedures that are being followed in terms of verification before the story is put out there for viewers or listeners or readers. And therefore, I think verification is key, particularly during this time, as we see many countries will be going to elections: Botswana, Namibia, Senegal, Ghana, and around the world, United Kingdom, the United States of America, Russia, and many others. And therefore, the social media will continue to be a very important platform for those countries that are going to elections, used by different interest groups.
And obviously in a safe manner there, Sophie. And as we wrap up, I can't let you go before asking you this. One big story that you are currently monitoring outside our borders is, of course, the extradition process that relates to the two suspects that were arrested in Eswatini, who are allegedly linked to investigations of the AKA murder. Talk to us about this case, Sophie.
Well, you know that people were arrested in different phases since last year, and I think the police in KwaZulu-Natal ensured that they are very tight in terms of managing this process, because they didn't want to get it wrong. And now you have these people who were arrested in Eswatini. Now they must be brought to South Africa. Now the processes are these two. One, extradition, which takes time, where you will have to present before the court of law in that country why you want these people back into your country, working with Interpol, and the courts in that country must be able to be convinced that it is important for these people to be sent back to South Africa. It will involve legal officials and lawyers and people fighting to ensure that they are not brought back to the country. On the other hand, you'll have a strong legal team representing South Africa, putting forward the case on behalf of the prosecuting authority. And therefore, that is the extradition. It takes time. Now the deportation gets much easier. This is what happened with Nandi Pamakudumane and Thabo Bester. It was a deportation because they went to Tanzania without following proper procedures. And in this case, I was told by the law enforcement agencies in Eswatini that these two individuals did the same. They entered Eswatini illegally. And therefore, it can be a simple matter of deporting them. But I think the DPP took a decision to follow proper procedures almost similar to extradition to ensure that the court in that country gives an instruction that indeed, or declare these people as people who have entered the country illegally. So that you don't find a situation where these people can come back when they are in South Africa and say, no, us being brought in South Africa was illegal, as Nandipa did. You'd recall that she did challenge the process of bringing them to South Africa. And therefore, I think this time the police, the DPP of KZN, doesn't want to make those mistakes again. And therefore, I think it might be a deportation, but they want the court to agree with them, or the law enforcement agencies in Eswatini, in South Africa, that it is indeed a straightforward case, so that you don't have a situation where they are challenged, particularly the police in South Africa. Because when you look at what the Commissioner of Police in KwaZulu-Natal has done, he has made a point that he's got a very watertight case.
Yes.
Evidence, procedures, and quietly working behind the scenes. And they don't want to compromise this process. We know that those who were arrested in South Africa are appearing on Wednesday. So if on Tuesday the court in Eswatini says it's a deportation, it's a straightforward matter, they entered the country illegally. All right. We will see them back in the country, and they will probably join the rest on Wednesday, but it's a matter to be monitored, and we have SABC team in Eswatini who will be giving us a update from later this afternoon.
All right, and thank you for your update there. That is SABC international editor Sophie Mokoena, and also we're staying with that story as the suspects that are linked to the murder of rapper Keenan aka Forbes and his friend Dibelo Tibbs Motswane will appear in the Durban Magistrates Court on Wednesday. Now, 5 suspects that appeared before the court last week are facing 10 counts, which include, of course, the 2 charges of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, as well as unlawful possession of firearms. The 5 are Lindokuhle Mkhwanazi, Lindani Ndimande, Sianda Edi Mieza, Mziwethemba Havi Gwabini, as well as Lindokuhle Ndimande. The state asked that the matter be postponed for further investigation and to allow them time to finalize the extradition, as our international editor said, processes of the 2 accused, of course, who were arrested in Eswatini to be formalized. And for more on this, we're bringing now SABC News reporter Jade Paulson. Jade, a very good afternoon to you. Look, what can we expect in the proceedings on Wednesday? Just talking to Sophie right now, she says that the court in Eswatini needs to make a ruling on whether or not these 2 suspects then need to be deported back to the country, or rather than an extradition process will need to ensue. What are you hearing from your side?
Well, a very good afternoon to you, Alicia. Yes, and one must make mention of the fact that while there's a glimmer of hope that these 7 suspects who are allegedly linked to the murder of the late rapper Keenan aka Forbes and Tibbs Motswane were caught, there are still lingering concerns about the mastermind behind it all. So when we were in court, we saw 5 of the 7 suspects appearing at the Durban Magistrates Court, and the case was postponed to the 6th of March. And the state said they wanted a postponement to look at a further investigation. Now, we do know State Prosecutor Advocate Lawrence Gaba explained that the state would need to postpone, to investigate. And I imagine that the state is also pinning their hopes on getting those 2 suspects back into the country, as my colleague there, Sophie Mokoena, has alluded to. Now, we spoke to the National Prosecuting Authority spokesperson in KZN, Natasha Kusun Kara. And she revealed that these suspects, the 5, are charged with 2 counts of murder, 5 counts of attempted murder, unlawful possession of a firearm, unlawful possession of ammunition, and conspiracy to commit murder, Alicia. And I imagine when those 2 suspects appear in the dock, we will also see them being charged with further charges. But I think what needs to be said is that although these 7 suspects have been arrested, there are still concerns that the mastermind is still out there. And we as the SABC have spoken to the father of AKA Tony Forbes, who has also said that he is concerned that the mastermind is not amongst these 7 suspects, Alicia. And if we look at these 7 suspects, there have been reports emerging that Linda Kutlem Kwanazi, who hails from Mtubatuba, is in fact a taxi boss. And he's been linked to several other murder cases in that particular area related to taxi wars. And then we have Mzwitemba Gwabeni. He's the oldest of the lot. He's 36 years old, and we are told that he's a mining boss, and he's actually the coordinator of this entire plot to kill AKA. Ironically, Alicia, what is also emerging is that he is represented by one of the top lawyers here in eThekwini, a lawyer that is also representing Zandile Pumede by the name of Paul Jurgensen. So in court, when speaking to Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, he actually posed that question to me. He said that, you know, it's very ironic that we've got suspects being presented by top lawyers here in eThekwini, and we need to trace who exactly is paying these lawyers to represent these suspects. And this is also something that Tony Forbes has mentioned, asking police to do the paper trail, link all of this together. So it's quite fascinating to see how this case is coming together. But, you know, one thing that Sophie Mukwena said as well is that police have been very, very careful how they handle this case. They don't want to botch it up. They have been mum. They've been very tight-lipped, Alicia. And I think that after what is happening and emanated from the Senzo Meyiwa case, they don't want a repetition.
Look, Jade, I mean, in relation to the 2 suspects that are still in Eswatini as we await the extradition or the deportation thereof them, are you able to confirm to us if, of course, these 2 do actually have South African citizenship, or maybe they do have dual citizenship with Eswatini? And also, do we know at this stage what their specific roles in the murder was? Because we've heard about the coordinators, we've heard about the spotters, etc.
Yeah. Alicia, I'm finding it very difficult to hear you. I can hear studio, but I think what you're asking me is with regards to the 2 SA nationals. Look, we do have their names. We're not going to be mentioning until they actually appear in South Africa in court. But what we know is that they are related. Both are from Durban. They were apprehended by the Royal Eswatini Police Service officers. And apparently they were hiding in the flat they rented in Mababe Zone 4 in Eswatini. Reports are also emerging from, you know, journalists in Eswatini that these brothers were in fact paid 133,000 as part of their a plot from the initial 800,000, and I imagine that the sum will come out in court here in SA, but this is the figures that are said to be thrown around. And they assisted this. We are told that they possibly could have been the ones to have pulled the trigger, and the other one another spotter. So that is what we are told. Like I said, Alicia, once they appear in court and that indictment will be released to journalists, we will have a better understanding of who, which role, and what they did in this particular plot to kill AKA and Tibbs. But that's what we know so far. We do know that court will resume on Wednesday, and I imagine that behind the scenes, cops as well as South African authorities are working tirelessly to get these 2 either extradited or deported back to South Africa.
All right, and very quickly, Jade, I know you touched on it a little bit earlier on. I mean, we understand that there's news articles that have come out this morning saying that these brothers actually come from a very notorious, powerful as well as feared family in northern KZN. And and one businessman allegedly pointed to one of the suspects as the person that had come to demand security fees at one of the businesses. So it seems like a lot of these the suspects are actually quite well known in relation to other crimes.
Yes, it is emerging, Ben. Reports have said that these are actually family members. 4 of them are family members out of the 7, and they hail from northern KwaZulu-Natal. And this is what's coming out. Unfortunately, Alicia, you know how news is. We always receive these reports, these rumors, these allegations, but what we can tell you is they share the same surname. Unfortunately, if we want to be factual, we need to wait until they appear in court, and we need to wait for the state prosecutor to actually put the timeline together, put all the pieces together and present their case. But this is what we are being told. They come from a very notorious family, like you said, Alicia, from northern KwaZulu-Natal, very feared. One of them is a taxi boss in Mtuba, as I said, and this is what is emerging. They have also been arrested for other crimes, taxi-related crimes. We are being told that the 2 that are in Eswatini, in fact, left South Africa not because they were on the run or not because they suspected that police were looking for them with regards to the AKA case, but rather because of taxi wars in northern KwaZulu-Natal. But coming back to this conversation, I reiterate, this will all come out in court. These are all rumors, allegations, reports that are coming out, but the state prosecutor will definitely highlight and put all of it in a timeline for us to make sense of it all.
Absolutely, Jade. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for that. That is SABC News reporter Jade Paulson. And remember, as we've just said, those are still allegations. We are waiting for confirmation of some of the facts as the trial continues on Wednesday. Now, the case of 5 men accused of the murder of former Bafana Bafana captain Senzo Meyiwa will resume in the Pretoria High Court tomorrow when counsel will present their closing arguments in the trial within a trial. The current trial is to determine the admissibility of the confession statements made by accused number 1 and 2. They want the alleged confession statements to be dismissed. Meyiwa was shot and killed at his girlfriend Kelly Khumalo's parents' home in 2014. Now, every year on the 8th of March, International Women's Day is celebrated. And this year, the day will be commemorated under the theme Inspire Inclusion. The campaign theme emphasizes the importance of diversity and empowerment in all aspects of society. And for more on this, let's bring in Dr. Leslie Ann Foster Masimanyane, Women's Right International. A very good afternoon to you, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining us here on Week Ahead. Look, let's talk about the achievements that have been made to empower women in order to attribute also to honoring such a day.
Good afternoon to you and to everyone online. Well, we have had many achievements as the global women's movement. First of all, I think the recognition, of women's rights as human rights was the most significant achievement that we have had. And that affected women globally. What it led to was the inclusion or the development of legislation that recognized women in constitutions. South Africa is the most progressive constitution which enshrines equality for women. And Women's Day really is about commemorating the equality that women have achieved. Admittedly, not all women enjoy that equality. Millions of women across the world still suffer discrimination and oppression. But, this is a day when we can commemorate and applaud the achievements that we have. And some of those achievements, just to name them in our own context, is having women take up a place in our parliaments, in government itself, in our judiciary, leading. We had just had a woman now that has been appointed judge president. I mean, these are massive, massive achievements that have not been possible in the past. But we see women rising into these very, very powerful positions and bringing their skill and their expertise and their knowledge to that. And having women in those positions means that every other woman can look up to and aspire to growth and development of that sort. So we are very fortunate in this country in many ways to have very good legislation, to have very good laws and policies in place. Unfortunately, when it comes to the actual realization and implementation of those laws, we fall quite seriously short. But nevertheless, it is a moment just to celebrate what we do have and what we have achieved.
And let's expand on that, Doctor. I mean, the theme is very, very telling: inspire inclusion. I mean, how can this then be used to achieve gender equality in all aspects of society, in the workplace, in the home environment, in some other fields that you've mentioned, and also in higher decision-making structures?
Yes, I think it's important that we have this theme, to inspire inclusion, because many women are not part of the discourse. They're not included in, the development of programs around the country and around the world. So we need to look at how better to include women in decision-making processes, how better to include women, as decision makers within the family and community. When women have low status, as they have in our country, they are not the decision makers, and often they have no control over their own lives or the lives of their offspring and families. So inclusion is very important. But I think inclusion also means that we need to think about more seriously and much more deeply about we include people from marginalized communities, women with disabilities, the LGBTQIA+ communities, we talk about refugee women, all of these women are women that are at risk of violence, risk of, ill health, lack of access, because they lack access to basic needs and so forth. We need to consider those. And so inclusion in this sense is very, very broad, I believe, because the whole purpose of International Women's Day is about advancing gender equality. And we know we have a very strong program in South Africa on gender equality, but it doesn't reach every woman. And this is the problem that we have, is how to work with that. My organization, Masimanyani, works at the grassroots level to ensure that young children, we're working with children from as young as 10 years old now, are included in programs and are included in initiatives aimed at their empowerment, their growth, their development, and particularly their equality on par with men and boys in the country. That's what we want to see across the world. And we are losing ground on that. We're losing ground on the human rights framework. We're losing ground on multilateralism. And we see that these are serious issues that will impede the inclusion of all women and girls and the advancement on gender equality. So we have an upward battle. We've won some, but we have a lot more work to do.
Absolutely, Doctor. And I wanted to ask, have we really reached the glass ceiling? But how can then this campaign help underscore the crucial role of inclusion in achieving that gender equality, as well as encouraging that much needed transformation that you just alluded to when it comes to how the role of women are viewed or perceived? The world is fast changing. Women have become pioneers in many fields, as you alluded to earlier on. Yet it seems the respect is still not equal as compared to our male counterparts.
Yeah, this is because we have to shift our norms and attitudes and behaviors within society, and that's an enormous task. It's not a task that we as civil society can achieve on our own, but it is an undertaking that government has to make, and it requires constant education, constant building of knowledge and capacity with men and women, and with boys and girls. And so that's the obstacle that we still face. There's a huge, huge resistance to accepting that gender equality benefits the entire society, an entire country. So if we look at some advanced countries like Norway and Sweden, we see that where they have greater gender equality, they have better quality of life. And that understanding is not yet, filtered through into our communities. But it is a task for our state, to engage with, and it certainly isn't something that just civil society does. So we do enormous work. We try our best in different avenues as civil society organizations, and there are many organizations across the country doing this work. But it will always have minimal reach when it is coming from civil society. We need the state to adopt a really strong political will to address gender equality, and we're not seeing that as yet. We have it enshrined in our constitution, we have it in laws and policies, but we're not seeing it being carried out by state actors at the lower level. And this is the struggle we will continue to have for many years to come. But it's not a struggle we're giving up on. It's a struggle we know that we have to keep at, and we are making inroads. We are seeing differences. And for me, I think those are the important things. And we don't see it across all of the sectors that we work in. But just hearing, for instance, that our HIV rates are dropping, and particularly women in the 10 to 24 age group have dropped, that's an important gender equality issue, because women were being infected because of their low status within society and their lack of decision making. Now we see that improving. So it is a journey that we're on. Globally, not in South Africa only, but we are seeing some, and we have to keep at it. It's like the old adage, how do you eat an elephant? Bite by bite, and that's what we are doing.
Doctor, thank you so much. Wishing you a great International Women's Day ahead. We're going to leave it there. Unfortunately, we're out of time.
Same to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Doc. That was Dr. Leslie Ann Foster there talking to us about the International Women's Day, which will be commemorated on the 8th of this March, rather. Let's take a quick ad break, and of course we'll be back shortly after that. Do stay with us. The Inkatha Freedom Party will officially launch its 2024 national and provincial election manifesto at Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban on March 10, 2024. And as South Africa's fourth largest party, the IFP is the official opposition in KwaZulu-Natal and controls the majority of municipalities in that province as well. And for more on this, let's welcome political analyst Professor Stephen Friedman. Professor, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Look, this is the first manifesto since the passing of the founder as well as president of the IFP, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. A lot of speculation about the leadership and how the party will fare in these upcoming elections. What are your expectations?
Hi, good afternoon, Alicia. I think that the passing of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi is having an effect on the IFP, but probably not enough of an effect to affect this particular election. I mean, there are tensions, challenges to the leadership and so on. But as far as their prospects in the election are concerned, I think they have a very strong prospect of being part of a coalition government in the province. Although in recent weeks, they've had a very unexpected setback. And the setback is this, that the Umkhonto weSizwe party, which is doing reasonably well in by-elections, is actually taking votes away from the IFP. It was expected to take votes away from the ANC. It is in fact taking away more votes from the IFP and indeed the EFF than it is from the ANC. So that is a bit of a setback for the IFP. But I think even within that, their prospects of being a coalition partner are very strong. Of course, that depends on who they want to be a coalition partner of, because the IFP is a signatory to the multi-party charter, and that seems to indicate that they're only interested in a coalition with the Democratic Alliance, which is what we've been told in public. But I think it's more complicated than that. I don't think that an IFP-ANC coalition either in KZN or nationally, is out of the question. I think it's one of several possibilities we'd have to consider.
Prof, look, let's not sweep this under the carpet. I mean, you touched on it a little bit. Look, there are fears that the IFP is already facing those internal challenges, and it could be plagued by further divisions now that Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi is no more. But this as tensions simmer between Velenkosi Nihlabisa and KwaZulu-Natal provincial chairperson Tamintuli. Now, the two leaders are rumored to be at loggerheads over the trajectory of the party. How do you then think this will impact the party, if any way, as we head into the elections?
Look, it's obviously not. I mean, you're correct. There are these tensions. I mean, Mr. Hlabisa's leadership has been challenged, and the Ntuli group insists he wasn't elected fairly, etc. Clearly, in any political party, if you have those sorts of tensions, it negatively affects your election prospects, because people start fighting with each other rather than fighting for votes. And we saw what happened in Cape. When Cape arrived on the scene, they got over 8% of the first election, and they shrunk into just about nothing because they kept on fighting among themselves. However, if one looks at municipal by-elections, which are the only real guide we have to how South Africans in that province are voting, it indicates, as I said earlier, there is a problem for the IFP, but I don't think it's a big enough problem to deprive them of a role as a potential coalition partner for one of the two biggest parties.
Now, Prof, I mean, on the issue of coalitions there, the IFP being rumoured to be in coalition with this one or that one, the emergence of the MK as well as other smaller political parties. What do you think then the IFP in itself does or could still offer South Africans that is new in terms of their manifesto?
Well, Alicia, I'm afraid when it comes down to coalitions, nobody's interested in what you can offer except for seats and votes. That's how coalitions work. If you have enough of a block of voters, people want you in their coalition. Look, the IFP remains, it does tend to break out of this to a certain extent. It remains primarily the party of Zulu tradition. It attracts, its voters are generally people who feel strongly about Zulu traditions and about the need to maintain them. And obviously it's an important demographic in the country, but it's a particular demographic. I mean, obviously, if you look at Gauteng, for example, the only place in which the IFP makes a substantial showing are those places in which there are people, migrant workers, who hail from KZN. So that obviously limits its vote, but up until fairly recently, within that limit, it was doing rather well. I mean, it was taking wards off the ANC quite regularly. It was establishing itself as a party probably who you couldn't govern in KZN without. So what I mean by that is they're not going to get a majority, but then I don't think anybody else is going to get a majority. So they are a party now who, if you want to govern KZN after the next election, you are going to have to talk to and reach some sort of agreement with.
But I mean, Prof, I'm asking, I want to understand, what do you think they could have on their manifesto that is different from their previous manifestos, and also not playing on the same playing field as the other parties that have promised job creation, ending load shedding, amongst other issues that we're currently grappling with as a country?
No, they're not going to have anything new or anything interesting, but I think that can be said just about across the board. Obviously, parties like to make a big fuss of their manifesto launch because it's an opportunity to project themselves to the public and send a message out. But first of all, as you correctly say, the manifestos don't really they don't really differ terribly much from each other. Everybody's against crime, everybody's against corruption, everybody's in favour of effective government, and everybody wants to end load shedding. And quite frankly, voters do not take these manifestos particularly seriously. I don't think terribly many voters sit over their kitchen table and look at all the manifestos and decide who to vote for. So when we evaluate whether a party is really making some kind of contribution or not, I think we have to look beyond the manifesto. And in the IFP's case, the IFP's role in our politics is to give a voice to a particular section of South African society who, because they are South Africans, need a voice. And that is the role of quite a few parties. I think where parties get themselves into trouble sometimes, and when they start pretending that they're something that they're not. There's nothing wrong with being the party of tradition, but when you start pretending you're all sorts of other things, then you create confusion and you actually do yourself no favors at all.
Professor, thank you so much for your contribution. Professor Stephen Friedman, the political analyst, weighing in as we look ahead at the IFP's upcoming manifesto launch out in Durban on the 10th. Let's take a quick ad break. We'll be back shortly after that. Welcome back. The Africa Energy Indaba 2024 kicks off tomorrow in Cape Town with over 4,000 in attendance, including more than 350 African and global CEOs that will be participating. Now, the conference will tackle several energy-related issues, and one of them is Africa's oil as well as gas potential and how it will grow significantly over the next 2 decades. Now, this is primarily driven by population growth, urbanization, as well as the emergence of a wealthier middle class on the continent. Africa is endowed with natural resources that are changing the global energy landscape. And to talk to us more about this, let's welcome Mr. Andre Hugo, the CEO of Novo Energy. Andre, a very good afternoon to you and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Look, is there a looming gas crisis amid this pursuit of a mixed energy plan that South Africa is currently dealing with?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts. Yes, South Africa is obviously we're facing a major energy challenge. I think the future energy mix in South Africa is going to be quite important for us. That obviously includes all our power requirements, as well as also some of our thermal requirements for big factories and for manufacturing. So Africa holds a lot of potential from an energy point of view. That can solve a number of socioeconomic issues in Africa. So it's a very, very important point in time for Africa having this conversation in Cape Town next week.
And speaking of that, I mean, Mozambique recently announced that it's actually reducing its gas supply to South Africa. So, Andrew, what does this mean then for South African gas consumers, and how do we accelerate the efforts for then alternative gas supply?
Yeah, I think the indication by the Mozambicans, especially Sasol, to withdraw or reduce that gas supply from Mozambique has got massive consequences for industry in South Africa. A major portion of manufacturing uses natural gas out of Mozambique, and if there's no more gas available, we'll see some of our very large manufacturers actually literally run dry on gas. So it's important for South Africa to develop plans around the future energy security, not only power, but also from a thermal point of view. And some of these plans include the importation of natural gas in a liquid form. We call that liquid natural gas into the country.
And look, the talk around the beginning of the end of fossil fuels, but that obviously is a tough conversation with our load shedding crisis, which is also reportedly going to be with us until the year 2051. And since the COP28 agreement signaling the transitioning away from fossil fuel, is there still then a role for gas in the African energy transition, you think?
Yes, I definitely think so. We like to refer to the energy trilemma, which is the balance between sustainability, obviously going green, going carbon zero, as well as the energy security and energy affordability. We've seen the impact that the lack of power had in South Africa on industry and manufacturing. So we need to find the balance into the future. Unfortunately, I don't think renewable energy is sufficient to support large manufacturing. So there's definitely a role for natural gas. And we can see that from Eskom's aspirations to build a 3,000 megawatt power station in Richards Bay, the RFP through the Independent Power Producers Program that's calling for another few thousand megawatts. So there's definite movement towards natural gas and gas to power that can play a gas security role in supporting our transition to renewables. Currently, the renewable technology, social interrupting, cannot on its own do all the heavy lifting because of the intermittency of renewables and technology maturity like battery storage that's not there yet. So we need a quick deployment of very large power infrastructure to get rid of load shedding, sort our economy, and also then support the transition to a cleaner future.
Andre, maybe let's expand on this. I mean, when we talk about a multi-use gas economy, what exactly are we referring to here?
Yeah, I think we tend to forget that only 25% of our energy mix, our final energy usage, is power. 75% is still non-power in South Africa. That includes coal usage, liquid fuels for transportation and for industrial applications. So gas has got the ability to not only support the power portfolio, which we know is inadequate at this point in time, and our renewables cannot do that because of grid constraints. But there's also a role for natural gas to support our thermal sector, where you've got very large smelters and large manufacturing that actually need a lot of energy that you cannot run from batteries. You cannot run it only when the sun shines. You need that secure, stable base load. So there's a dual role for natural gas into the future.
And then the Africa Gas Forum has been created to ensure a balance, of course, between country-specific opportunities as well as the common issues that affect the whole region, such as exploration activity. So what do you think are some of the hurdles then regarding the licensing rounds, development plans, as well as the move to gas?
Yeah, I think Southern Africa, and I can speak from that perspective, perhaps some comments on East and West Africa as well, but recently, Southern Africa, we've discovered the largest gas reserves in the world. It started off with northern Mozambique in the Rovuma Basin. Massive amounts of gas that has been found there, and their projects are now entering in production phase, where most of that gas is being exported. Namibia has also recently very large finds in Namibia. The second large international find of natural gas happened in Zimbabwe, in the Zambezi Valley last year. So we endowed with a massive amount of energy, so it's happening all around South Africa, and we've been delayed by some of the regulatory complexities that exist in our system, like mining licenses. Same with the upstream exploration, very difficult environmental opposition. Licensing and regulations that makes it difficult for internationals to rather come to South Africa, and we know these gas fields extend into South Africa in the Orange River Basin, and as well as the shale gas and the other gas fields, onshore gas fields in South Africa. We've just been very slow in developing those, and they could have supported us by now, but unfortunately. Our regulatory framework didn't make it easy for guys so they'd rather go now to Mozambique or Zimbabwe or to Namibia, the Congo, or West or East Africa, Tanzania, etc. So I think we've put ourselves in a very difficult position regarding natural gas and thermal energy.
Yeah, and I mean, Andre, then would you say there are any new tax regimes then that can benefit us as a country, the region, as well as the sector?
Yeah, perhaps if you just think about it, so the South African economy has been built on very cheap energy. We still use 90% of our primary fuel is still coal, and that cheap energy has supported all our manufacturing, our old East Coast, Asselos, Sassels, mining sectors, the smelters, the ferrochrome complexes in Woodbank, Middelburg. So I think we shouldn't be trying to maximize the upstream tax benefit out of these projects, but rather have the GDP multiplier effect into our economy, and there will be natural tax base being created by that through job creation and other economic activity. So perhaps we shouldn't go for the goose, but rather see how we can add value by making omelets, rather, so to speak.
Andrew, thank you so much for your contribution there. That is Mr. Andrew Hugo, the CEO of Novo Energy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, motorists will have to dig deeper into their pockets to fill up at filling stations, as preliminary data from the Central Energy Fund shows that the price of petrol will likely go up this coming week. The Automobile Association, or AA, says the current data shows that 95-octane petrol is set to increase by R1.35 per litre, while 93-octane is expected to go up by R1.31 per litre. The price of a litre of diesel will likely go up by R1.43, while illuminating paraffin by 96 cents per litre. The AA says the current data is projecting fuel prices to jump the 24 Rand per litre mark for both grades of petrol. It says the expected increase is concerning, as it will undoubtedly put more pressure on already stretched consumers, and increasing fuel prices will likely impact consumer inflation and lead to the Reserve Bank keeping interest rates at elevated levels for longer. Further afield, South Africa could leave the BRICS bloc, and that's the warning that comes from South Africa's ambassador to Russia. The diplomat says that if opposition comes to power, there is a high probability of South Africa changing its course internationally. Dasha Shenishova is in Moscow with more.
South African ambassador to Russia, Muzavukile Jeff Makituka, didn't rule out that South Africa could leave BRICS bloc should the opposition party in South Africa win the next presidential election. According to the diplomat, some politicians are very hostile to Russia, and if they are in power, they could act as Argentina. Earlier this year, Argentina declined an invitation to join the expanded BRICS bloc. Analysts believe it is because of the government of the new president, Javier Milei. The ambassador of South Africa also said that the opposition factions in South Africa are not friends of Russia, and Moscow should analyze that. The diplomat also said that South African authorities will not be able to ensure the safety of the Russian president in case of his visit to the country because of the warrant issued by the ICC for his arrest. And the laws of the country will not be changed for one person. Dasha Chernashova, SABC News, Moscow.
Kenyan President William Ruto says his country is still committed to helping Haiti fight the issue of gangs in the country. Ruto met with Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry. The Kenyan president signed a deployment deal of 1,000 police officers from Kenya that will assist with law enforcement agencies in Haiti.
To inform that Prime Minister Ariel Henry, here with me, and I have witnessed the signing of this instrument, we have also discussed the next steps to enable the fast tracking of this deployment. And the importance, significance, and urgency of this mission cannot be overstated. It is a mission for humanity. It is a mission in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Haiti. We, as Kenya, together with our brothers and sisters from different countries who have graciously accepted to be part of this mission, to contribute police officers, to contribute equipment, to contribute other facilities, including financial resources, are responding to the cry of children who want to go to school, of women who want to go to hospital and find medicine, to young people who want to further their careers, and to business people who want to continue with their business. We are making this response because it is what is right. It is what humanity, it is what humankind can do to fellow humankind. So we are very proud that this moment and the signing ceremony we have witnessed is the final step in the response that has been asked by the people of Haiti, the children of Haiti, the women in Haiti, the civil society, and the entire society of the Haitian people, for them to have a peaceful country to live in, and for them to contribute to the development of Haiti and global peace, global security, and global prosperity.
Well, that's a wrap from the week ahead. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you again next week, same time and place. I'm Alicia Jali. Have yourself a great Sunday further. Goodbye.